Welcome to our presentation on Federated Search, which is a product that you may have heard of before, but you might not know the intricate details to it. So today we're going to do a quick introduction to what the product does and how it works, and how you can use it in your organization. I'm Ken Rickard. I'm the Senior Director of Consulting at Palantir.net. We're a Chicago-based digital consultancy. I'm also the Product Manager for Federated Search. And I've been doing Drupal work since 2005 back in the newspaper industry. You may know me from some of the modules that I maintain as well. I maintain both domain access and workbench access, and I have been actively contributing to the project for quite some time. As an open source developer and advocate, one of the things I really like about this project is how it came about. Our clients at the University of Michigan Medical Center came to us with what is really a common set of problems. They wanted to search across a network of different websites. They had some Drupal 7 sites and they were launching some Drupal 8 sites. And they wanted to be able to both search across the entire network and just search individual sites on that platform. But they wanted a cross-platform experience such that every site would give the same search results. There would be some autocomplete features and some faceted search, and no matter which site in the network you were working with or searching from, you would get the same results. They also wanted it to be easy to deploy with some standard configuration options and be able to flow it into their common deployment workflow. And then when we worked with other clients, we also wanted to be able to support things like Acquia Site Factory and other good deployment workflows. So before we dive into the technical details, I'll give you a quick tour of what our collaboration produced. If you go to the Michigan Medicine websites right now and run a search, you will get the following interface. This has been live for about 2 years at this point. And you'll notice we've done a simple search for testing. We've gotten almost 2,500, 2,600 results. And in the left-hand column, you'll see we have some default facets for that. And we'll explore what those facets do here in a second. The primary facet that we show is the site. What site did this content come from? And you can see here there are at least 8 different sites in the list, and they're broken down by number of hits. This is something that Search with Solr does very, very well, and we'll talk about how that happens when we look at the back end. In addition to going and looking at what site it came from, you can also on their site look at what type of content it is. Is it an article? Is it a news archive? Is it patient care information? Because when you're searching for medical information, that really matters to you. I mean, if you're after information about, say, COVID testing, because we're in the middle of the pandemic, a patient care result about testing is going to be more important to you, I think, than a news archive. And so having that at your fingertips helps people find what they need quickly. In addition to being able to sort by the site or by the type of content, you can also filter things by date. So we have a date facet that is accessible and keyboard ready. So you can go in and look for just things that were posted recently. It's a very handy tool. And so having these facets built in give us a strong foundation for the user interface. And what's really nice about the way that Federated Search works is that interface is uniform across the different sites in the network. So when we run that same search and just want to get results from the children's hospital, you don't have to learn a new interface. And so it's really nice, and it's a seamless experience for people who are coming to the series of websites. And you'll see that when we're on the Mott Children's Hospital website, we can automatically default to filtering to results from that site. And if we turn that filter off, we get the exact same results and the exact same experience that we would from the main site. This is by design, and it's a very, very desirable feature. So let's talk about the use case. How did this project come about, and what does it try to do? So in the case of Michigan, which is also true of our clients at the state of Georgia, they have an existing set of Drupal 7 sites, and they were launching new Drupal 8 sites as they go, and now they're going to be adding Drupal 9 sites as well. In the Michigan case, they also have domain access, which is a bit of a complication, but the big thing that we want to talk about is the fact that they have no guarantee of common architecture. That means they might have different content types, they might have different fields, and so getting all the information to be accessible in a consistent manner is their fundamental problem. I think a ancillary problem to that is the fact that Google has trained everyone to think that search is magic and it's very, very easy. And so when they're looking at their internal stakeholders, you know, and you may have this problem as well, you're just asked, hey, make it work the way that Google does, not understanding just how complex the back end is on Google. What's also interesting in the Michigan case is that they used to be consumers of what's called the Google Search Appliance, which, if you recall, was a way that you could actually purchase a Google indexer and install it in your own data center. The problem is that a couple of years ago, Google end-of-lifed this product and phased it out. And a lot of our clients in the higher ed space in particular were using Google Site Search, which gives you lesser branded results using Google's search tools. The problem is that they end-of-lifed that as well. And so Michigan in particular came to us and said, hey, the options that we have been using are not going to be available anymore. So what can we do? How do we put this together? And again, there's a really interesting collaboration for us because we started to look at the exact problem. And the way things started was the folks at Michigan came to us and said, hey, can I actually search Drupal 7 and Drupal 8 at the same time? Now, when we started this project, which is 3 years ago, there are good and solid Drupal products that will let you search a cluster of Drupal 7 sites or a cluster of Drupal 8 sites. There aren't any products, or weren't, that would let you search across both. And so what we started to look at is how can we make this happen and how can we make it work in a manageable and replicable way. And we broke the problem down into 3 different phases, and I'll talk about each one of those. So we're going to start off by talking about Solr. Solr is the back end for how everything works. Solr is open source. It is widely available. It is well known. And Solr is pretty easy to work with. The big thing is that Solr expects a uniform, what we would call a schema, just a data structure, a uniform schema or data structure for proper results when you're doing an index. Normally this isn't a huge problem if you're indexing one site because it only has one schema. In the case of multi-site search, the typical expectation is that all of those sites will have identical schemas. The problem becomes when you don't have identical schemas, we need to create one. And that's what Federated Search does, is it creates these 10 items that you can see here, right? Federated title, federated date, federated type, which you all saw in the search index, or the search results page when we were looking at that. This is how we can search across multiple sites. And the nice thing about Solr is that Solr is designed such that it will allow you to have multiple sources feed into a single index. So that becomes really, really critical to us. The other piece that makes Solr really nice is that Solr already understands how to return JSON objects. And if you're not a programmer, just understand that JSON is a very effective, very easy to use method for distributing information across the network. So the fact that Solr speaks JSON is a really good thing because it allows for a decoupled search application. And what I mean by decoupled is we can actually take the user interface and extract it from Drupal so that you're not using Drupal as the search front end. The reason that's important is that lets our application be portable. We can have the exact same experience on Drupal 7 and on Drupal 8 because our front end is not tied to either one of them. And we'll talk about that more here in a minute. So given that we have this good data repository and we can get JSON output, we were looking for a good way to render that. And that's where React comes into the picture. React is an application framework. It's written in JavaScript, and React applications really, really enjoy consuming JSON and formatting its results. And what's really nice for us is that someone had already done some of this work, had done a Solr faceted search React project. And so when we looked at that as a solution, it was really, really handy to us. This is one of those benefits of doing open source software. The React library had an open source license, which meant that we could use it for our own purposes, and we could change and extend it. And so that's what we did. Because the existing library, which we have a picture of here, had all the little pieces we want, but didn't have the design or the user interface refinements that we'd like to have. So the fact that we have a proof of concept already that says, hey, here's a drop-in React application that will speak to Solr and hit the needs that you have, really gave us a leg up on this project. So the next thing that we had to do with the university was actually do design implementation. We had to do usability and accessibility testing around the components that you would find on a search page to make sure that we were indexing the right things and that we were making things accessible and usable for everyone who might come to the websites. And as I said before, React has another advantage in that this is a JavaScript application that we can embed in either Drupal 7 or in Drupal 8 and get the exact same look and feel. That gives us the uniform search results that we're after so that you have, again, this common experience across the entire network. So with those two pieces in place, we have Solar and we have React, then the question simply becomes, how do we plug Drupal into this? And again, this is what our project sponsor at Michigan came to us with. And he asked a very innocent question one day. He said, hey, is it possible for me to put Drupal 7 data and Drupal 8 data into one search index? And I said, let me have 3 days to explore that and find out. And the answer is yes, you can. The existing tools that exist in the Drupal ecosystem, Search API Solar, both handle this very, very nicely. In fact, you can index things from a Drupal 7 site that you can only delete from that Drupal 7 site, even though they're in the index alongside your Drupal 8 content. That's really, really handy. So we didn't have to reinvent the indexing portion. Drupal handed it to us already. The new problem that we did have to solve, however, is this issue of, well, the data structures aren't the same across all the sites in the network. And so we created a very elegant solution. I'm really proud of the team and the work they did on this, because they went through and, as good engineers do, they said, how do we abstract this problem into a general solution? And they created a module that's standalone in Drupal 8 and Drupal 9 called Search API Field Map. And what Search API Field Map does is convert data to the standard schema. As we showed before, Solar is expecting these discrete pieces of data. What's the date of the article? What's the preview image? Does it have any terms? What's its title? Etc. So we need to be able to map those things in a consistent manner. And what the team did is it provided a couple of different ways to handle that. The simplest is straight up string mapping. Let's say you have, different content types on different websites, right? I like this example. There's a listicle content type here, but we've decided that we're going to just archive that in the search index as a blog article. And that's because only one site in the network has a listicle, and it's not a great term, so we don't want to expose that. So here we take 6 different content types, and you'll notice that 4 of them are just indexed as quote-unquote blog article. This is simple string mapping that lets us get the data standardization that we want so that we can have a consistent experience. More complex, and this is for folks who've been working with Drupal for a while, you'll understand and know what this is immediately when looking at it. We support tokens. Tokens are little pieces of pseudocode, essentially, that do text replacements with actual values. So here what we've said is, normally when we index the date of published content, we want to index the creation date. Right? Drupal has a creation date, it has an updated date. For the news articles that the university had, they have a published date field that is specific to articles. And so here we can say with the token system, when you are indexing this type of content, use this field to represent this data. The power in that, again, is it gives us a lot of flexibility in normalizing and standardizing our data for indexing. Even better comes to the question of taxonomy. Taxonomy is a super powerful element in Drupal. The challenge when you have a taxonomy, which is what you use for tagging, is that it might not be identical across your entire network. So this is particularly true in healthcare, where some of the terminology can be very, very confusing. People don't understand what all the medical terms are. So sometimes we need to put them in more plain English. So here's a very simple example where we have a dermatology tag that exists on one site but it might be listed as skincare on another site. And so we can actually map multiple aliases that gets put into the search index. And what that allows us to do is, as part of the filter results, you can get taxonomy terms that are tagged very, very specifically. So here we have search results that you can see show us both type and specialty. It's a really, really powerful tool, and it's at the core of what we're trying to do. So when we look at what Drupal is doing for us here, so we already had a Solar application and we have a React app that talks to it. Drupal provides the search index capacity. It provides a search page callback, this actual place where we embed the React application, and it provides a search box. And that's all. It's really, really straightforward. It's really, really simple. So we have our parts, right? So we have Solar on the back end, we have React on the front end, and then we have Drupal in the middle that is both indexing and displaying the other two pieces. And now I'm going to let you in on a little secret. Drupal is not actually a requirement for this system. The React application can run without Drupal at all. You have data source flexibility. What that means is if you have data from other systems, as long as you can tell Solar how to index that data, you can display it in this application. That really opens up an awful lot of possibilities when you're talking about how to do your site structure, how to do your site search. Because if you can index non-CMS content or content from both Drupal and WordPress, for example, your network becomes that much more powerful. So before we end, we should talk about the technical considerations that you might have when you're starting a project with this. So these are the sort of main questions that we would encourage you to think about. Number one, are my sites the same, right? Am I using the same Drupal version across the network? Do I have other sources that I need to consider that are important content that I'd like to index? Do I have a common content model? That means, do I have the same content types? Do I have the same fields and field names? Do I have common taxonomies? You're going to want to look at those things and map them out and say, here's how we standardize that. Then you want to ask that question, what sites should I search? Do I search all sites? Do I search one site? Do I search a cluster of sites? The state of Georgia has implemented this project, and it's really interesting because they have about 85 sites in their network, and only the main georgia.gov actually lets you search all 85 sites. On every other site, you just search that one site. And the way you can configure the Federated Search app allows for that. You can actually, through the user interface, configure it to say, yes, when you're on this website, only search this website. You can also, through a little bit of configuration, say, well, when you're on this site, say the Georgia Department of Health and Human Services, these other three sites are related, so we want to return that whole cluster. So that's really, really nice, and you can do that kind of planning as well. The other thing you need to think about is how are you going to launch new sites? Are you using configuration management in Drupal 8 or Drupal 9? Are you doing installation profiles in Drupal 7? Are you just running install hooks? There are a couple of different ways to do it. Georgia is in a really great position. They're running on Acquia Site Factory, and it's built into their site installation. And so when you spin up a new site, it automatically connects it to the network and knows how to index it. So that's really, really powerful. Before we end, I just want to say, why did we do this? What do we think is important about it? And at Palantir, we provide open source tools and consulting, right? So we firmly believe that doing this work in the open as free and open source software is really, really valuable. As you saw, we built on the work that other people have done, right? Solar is an open source project. The Federated Search, the original React application, is an open source project. All we did is take it and say, okay, well, let's make this a networked application. So there are three things that I would say that you can think about and come and talk to us about during the conference. Do you want to contribute to the project? I mean, Search API Federated Solar is maintained publicly on Drupal.org, so you can go and contribute to it. You can ask for feature requests. There's all kinds of things that we're working on that we would love to show to people. Do you need implementation services? Do you need us to come and help you install the system within your existing project? Which is exactly what we did on Georgia.gov. They were working with other vendors in both Drupal 7 and Drupal 8 on projects, and we came in to tie this one piece in to make their sites more successful. And then we could just provide consultation services. I had a call like this just the other day where we're helping another team stand up a search service that works for you and for your audiences. So we're very flexible. I think the project is very flexible, and I hope you'll come and ask us more questions about it. Thank you for your time.